Hi, I'm standing outside the circuit of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, one of the most famous motor racing events in the world. The first race was held here just over 100 years ago, and I've been to the last 24 of them, which is kind of showing my age a bit. Anyway, during that time I've taken a lot of photos here, and in this video I'd like to share some of my favourite locations, give you some tips and advice on taking photos here, and also share some of the images I've taken on this trip. I'll also be sharing what it's like to experience this amazing event. So if you've never been before, this will give you a little taster of what it's like, and if you have been, it might give you some ideas of what you can do next time you're here. My trip to Le Mans started early on a Wednesday morning as I left a rather cloudy London just before 6 AM. The early start meant there wasn't much traffic on the drive out of London, and before long I was checking in for my crossing at Eurotunnel. Soon afterwards I was boarding the train. The weather was much nicer in France, and I enjoyed blue skies and quiet roads for my drive down. There wasn't much traffic, although I did occasionally spot other cars heading for the race. Eventually I made it to Le Mans and followed the signs to the campsite where I'd be staying for the next 4 nights. I've arrived, my tent is pitched, I still need to sort out my bed and everything, but I'll do that when I get back. So I'm heading into the circuit now. The practice session started about an hour and a half ago, there's an hour and a half left, so I'm going to go in, head to the Ford Chicane I think, and try and get some shots of the cars as they go around, and see how they come out. The walk to the Ford Chicane took me behind the paddocks, then through a tunnel under the start-finish straight. A few minutes later I was at the chicane and found my first spot to shoot from. One of the challenges of Le Mans is the amount of fencing that obscures your view of the cars. At this corner though, if you place your lens against the first fence, you can get a clear view of the cars through the cutout in the second fence. Here are some of the photos I got from this spot. My next location was just a few metres away, right next to the T23 grandstand. There's a gap in the barrier here, and if you get close to the wire fence you can look through and get a good view straight up the start-finish line. It's pretty busy here usually, but if you're patient you can usually get a good spot. Another great location is the T23 grandstand itself. It's ideal for panning shots of the cars as they drive through the chicane. Bear in mind though that the viewing platform here is for wheelchair users, so only use it if it's clear. To give a sensation of movement with these panning shots I used an ND filter. This reduces the amount of light coming into the camera and lets you select a slower shutter speed. This gives you a nice blurred effect as you move the camera to follow the car. I'm heading towards the Ferris wheel now, which is just before you get to the start-finish line as the cars go around the circuit. So it's a bit of a trek from the campsite, and it's the first time I've been up here actually. In all my years of coming to Le Mans I've never been on the Ferris wheel, so this is a new experience for me. It should have a good view though, so we'll see how it is. And I'll show you the kind of shots I get. I then took one of the free shuttle buses to Arnage, another of the famous corners on the circuit. I had a bit of time to spare before the next practice session started, so I grabbed a rather unhealthy dinner. The next session started just after sunset, so this was a great opportunity to photograph the cars in the dark. I especially wanted to get some with the glowing brake discs as they braked heavily for the next corner. This was quite a popular location, so there were quite a few people there. I was very glad to have my portable steps with me, which meant I could photograph over the tops of people's heads, and also gave me a little bit of extra clearance to clear the wire mesh fencing that was in front of me. By now it was almost midnight and I was ready for bed. I took the shuttle bus back to the circuit and then headed to the campsite. Now this was Wednesday evening, so the buses were pretty quiet. On the race weekend they can be a lot busier, with queues of up to an hour or more. Hi, it's Thursday morning and I'm heading into town now to pick up some provisions at the local supermarket. There's no track action till later on this afternoon. There's another practice session. I think it starts about 2:45, so plenty of time for that. So it's a beautiful morning. Had a shower, very cold shower. There's no hot water in the campsite at the moment, so hopefully that'll change. There was a bit of thunder this morning, so everything's a bit damp, but with this heat, I think it's going to be about 29-30 degrees today. It'll dry out pretty quickly. So I'm going to get on the tram, head into town and see you in a bit. There's a tram stop at the circuit, which is just a few minutes walk from my campsite, and it's a cheap and easy way to get into town. It stops directly outside the supermarket, which is really convenient. Once inside, you're greeted with everything you could possibly need for a weekend at Le Mans, from drinking supplies, camping gear, and all the food you could possibly eat. Obviously, being a French supermarket, there's a fantastic cheese selection, as well as some very tempting cakes. After stocking up on a few supplies, I took the tram back to the circuit and headed over to the ACO enclosure to grab a bite to eat. As there weren't any cars out on track until later, I took the opportunity to wander around the village where you can check out various stands and do a bit of shopping too. It's a nice time to explore as it's much quieter than later on in the weekend. Even the normally packed champagne bar was almost empty. Hi there, it's Thursday afternoon and I'm heading back into the circuit again. So we've got the last hour or so of the final practice session, and then we've got the hyperpole qualification sessions and then final night practice. So it's going to be a long evening and I'll find a few more of my favourite locations, talk you through them when I'm there. You can hear some of the sounds of Le Mans in the background, so generators going in the campsites and music going on in another campsite. There's a pretty noisy place. Not going to get much sleep here, even before the race starts. So definitely bring earplugs if you come. Anyway, I'll catch you in a bit. I headed over the Dunlop Bridge and down towards the Goodyear Grandstand. This location gives a really good view of the cars as they head up the curves towards the Dunlop Bridge. You can either photograph from the top rows of the grandstand or down on the ground next to the fence and shoot through the wire mesh. This is a particularly good spot in the evening as you get a lovely warm light as the sun sets. After sunset, I headed to a new location. This was the T12 grandstand located towards the end of the start-finish straight. I set up my tripod on the back row as I wanted to get some long exposure light trails as the cars headed up towards the Dunlop Bridge. Thursday night's free practice session was the last time the Le Mans cars would be on track until race day, which meant no photography on Friday. There was still plenty to do though. The circuit itself was very quiet, which made it an ideal time to explore more of the displays. You could even visit the museum for free, which is a great way to spend an hour or so learning about the history of the race. You can see a variety of cars right from the early days of the race to the modern day. I though decided to take a drive out into the French countryside to a place called Chartre-sur-le-Loir, a little town with a big Le Mans history. This is a popular spot to visit as the hotel in the town square was used as the headquarters for various Le Mans teams from the 1950s until the 70s. They used to work on the cars in the hotel's garage and drive them to and from the circuit on the public roads. The bar walls are covered with photos celebrating its history. You can grab a drink outside with friends or admire some of the amazing cars parked in and around the town square. I then drove back to the campsite and headed back into the circuit. It's Friday afternoon and one of the things you can do is walk around the circuit. They open it up at about 3 o'clock. and I'm heading in there now. It's pretty busy. I'm going to head to the pit lane, have a look around there. You can actually look at the teams working on the cars, getting ready for the race tomorrow, fixing any damage from last night's session, or just tweaking the cars, getting them ready. So yeah, I'm going to have a look and see what it's like. Right, I'm in the pit lane at Le Mans. It's crazy to think that in just under 24 hours, all these cars here will be setting off on the start of the 24-hour race. The mechanics are doing some last-minute prep to them. All the garages seem to be busy. It's just amazing to be standing here, just so close to the start of this amazing race. I've now finished my walk through the pit lane, which was really interesting. There's a lot of teams busy at work. I think some have got more work than others tonight. And I've walked down the end of the pit lane onto the start-finish line. So I'm now on the circuit itself. And behind me is the run down to the first corner where the cars will be heading off in just under 24 hours. This is the calm before the storm. So it's Friday evening. Everything's fairly quiet. There's a bit of partying going on in the circuit, but a lot of people are just chilling out at camp. Race starts tomorrow. It's going to be really exciting. So I'm just going to get back to my tent, chill out for a bit, download some images, and I'll give you a little tour of the campsite as we walk back to my tent. A lot of motorhomes here, a few tents, quite a few nice cars, as well as some sort of random collection of kind of vans and normal cars and all sorts really. So it's yeah, it's interesting just wandering around, looking at how people have got their setups. There's a big group there having a barbecue and a bit of a party in their tent, and there's smaller groups of just couples and small groups of friends. So here's my tent. It's meant to be a 3-person, but I think realistically it's 2. It's kind of comfortable for 1, so it's perfect for me. Gives you a bit of space for some bags as well. Anyway, I'm going to retire for the night and see you in the morning. It's now 1 o'clock on Saturday, just 3 hours before the race is due to start, and I'm heading into the circuit. So starting to get busy now, excitement's building, and it's quite a cloudy, overcast day, so the coolest day of the weekend so far, which is quite pleasant actually, although not great for photography. Want a bit of sunlight later on. Anyway, going to head in and just watch some of the build-up and share in the excitement, so really looking forward to it. I'll catch you in a bit. Even with several hours to go until the start of the race, the crowds are building and there was a definite buzz in the air. While you can access any of the grandstands on the Wednesday and Thursday beforehand, when it comes to the race weekend you do need a grandstand ticket. I'd got myself a seat in the T34 grandstand, which is next to the paddock. From here I had a great view of the cars formed up on the grid, surrounded by spectators doing their grid walk. The grandstands were filling up and the excitement was building. As the time was approaching 4 PM, it was time for the grid to clear, the drivers to get in the cars and head off on their formation lap. As the seconds ticked down to 4 PM, everyone was on their feet waiting for the race to start. Then with the roar of engines, the grid of 62 cars thundered past to begin 24 hours of racing. The T34 grandstand is a great place to watch the start of the race and get some panning shots of the cars heading down the straight. It also gives a great opportunity to photograph the cars as they come into the pit lane. Also, if you hold your camera over the edge and point it down, you can get some good shots of the mechanics working on the cars. I was lucky to be sitting directly above the pit of the eventual winner, the number 83 Ferrari. I watched the first few hours of the race from the grandstand and then headed off towards the Dunlop Curves. There were a few photo locations I wanted to try here. The first location was just past the Dunlop Bridge. If you carry on past the bridge, there's a raised area on the left with some trees and a little chapel. From here you can look through the trees and get a nice view of the Dunlop Bridge. It's also a good spot to try out your panning technique with a slow shutter speed. You can use the trees or the spectators to get some blur in the image to give a sensation of movement. Slightly further on is one of my favourite locations at Le Mans for photography. If you carry on until you get to the Marshal's Post, there's a raised area to the left, and you get a really good view here of the cars as they flick left and right into Tertre Rouge. Bear in mind though, this is a popular spot, so it can be quite busy. This is where some portable steps come in handy. There's another good spot around here as well. If you carry on towards Tertre Rouge and walk just past the underpass that goes under the circuit, there's an earth banking on the left with some trees. If you climb up about halfway up this banking, you can get some nice panning shots of the cars through the trees as they head into the corner. I'd also really recommend walking down to Tertre Rouge Corner. You get a really good sense of the speed these cars carry into the corner as they head down to the Mulsanne Straight. From here you can get to the inside of the circuit through the underpass. If you take a right, there'll soon be an earth bank in front of you which gives you another view of the Dunlop Bridge. By now it was getting pretty dark, so it was time to head up to the inside of Tertre Rouge to get some panning shots. It was now time to head back to my tent and get a few hours sleep before going back to the circuit in the morning. It was still very busy out, with a lot of people either watching the race or enjoying the entertainment. There was even a drone and fireworks show at midnight that was very impressive. The following morning I was up early and went back in to just after the Dunlop Bridge again. Although I'd taken photos here the previous evening, this is also a great location just after sunrise as the sun hits the front of the cars. The race was over halfway through by this point, so I wanted to capture photos showing the cars covered in dirt from over 12 hours of hard racing. It was then time to pack up my tent, load up the car and drop it off at the park and ride in town so I could get the tram back into the circuit. I needed to get to Calais that evening but didn't want to get stuck in traffic leaving the circuit or miss the end of the race. I watched the winning Ferrari take the checkered flag at 4 PM, then I got the tram back to my car. So the race is over for another year and I'm about to head home via Calais. Before I do though, I just wanted to give a few final tips. So the first one is if you're keen on getting car photos here, then come down on a Wednesday. There's more track action, you can get better access and it's quieter. The second one is plan. Figure out what corners you want to take photos at and what time, and make sure you allow yourself enough time to get there because it can be quite busy, it can take a while to get around. And the third one is if you haven't been before, then definitely come. You don't need to camp. You can stay in a motorhome, you can stay in a chateau, you can stay in a hotel. There's different ways of doing it. It's an amazing experience though. If you like cars and motor racing, then you have to come and experience Le Mans at least once. Hopefully this video's given you a little taster of what it's like, and I hope you've enjoyed my photos. I've worked out I walked over 38 miles and took probably about 8,000 photos to put this video together, so if that's not worth a like, then I don't know what is, so I'd really appreciate it if you did hit that like button. As I head back home now, I'll show you a few more of the photos I took here. I really hope you enjoy them, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks a lot for watching.